Some houses keep secrets, some rooms hide screams, and some neighbors were never alive to begin with. These are the stories you were never meant to hear. I moved into my apartment on the edge of town because rent was cheap and neighbors minded their own business. After freelancing for years in noisy cities, the quiet here felt like a luxury. There was only one other unit on my floor, a man named Harold Green. He looked like the kind of person you'd trust instantly. Mid-60s, always in iron shirts, soft-spoken. We exchanged polite nods in the hallway. He never said much beyond a mumbled good morning. One evening, about a month after I moved in, he knocked on my door with a warm smile and a small request. "I'm heading out of town for a week," he said. "Would you mind feeding my cat and watering the plants while I'm gone? I'll owe you one." I hesitated. I wasn't particularly a cat person, but it felt rude to say no. He handed me a single key and a handwritten note. "I'll be gone by noon tomorrow," he added. "Thanks again." I figured it would be simple. A favor, nothing more. The next afternoon, I stepped into Harold's apartment for the first time. It smelled faintly metallic, like a dentist's office mixed with dust. I thought maybe it was just the old carpet. The lights were dim, even though the curtains were drawn tightly across all the windows. There were no signs of a cat, no litter box, no food bowls, no scratching post. That was odd. The apartment was spotless, unnaturally so, as if no one really lived in it. I followed the instructions on his list. Water the 2 plants by the window. Check the kitchen tap for leaks. And top off the cat's bowl, even though I couldn't find the cat. There was one more thing I noticed. A door at the end of the hallway, shut with multiple locks, 3 on the outside, and a padlock near the handle. It looked industrial, out of place. I laughed nervously to myself. Must be a storage room or gun cabinet or something. Still, a chill crawled down my spine. Something about this place didn't feel right. On the 3rd day, while refilling the plant water jug, I bumped into a bookshelf. A thin paperback tumbled to the floor and from inside. Several Polaroid photographs fell out. I picked one up, curious. It showed a woman, gagged, tied to a chair, eyes wide in horror. I froze. The next photo was of a man, bound and bruised. Another showed someone unconscious on a cement floor. This wasn't art. This was evidence. I flipped the photo over. A date was scribbled in pen. June 14th, 2017. That same week, I remembered seeing a missing person poster for a woman who looked eerily similar. A cold realization settled in my gut. These weren't random photos. These were victims. And Harold? He wasn't visiting his daughter. Something about this was all wrong. That night, I barely slept. I kept staring at the keys Harold gave me. My mind ran in circles. Was I overthinking this? Or had I just walked into a serial killer's lair? By morning, I made up my mind. I had to see what was behind that locked door. I waited until just after midnight, slipped into Harold's apartment with trembling hands. The place was deathly silent. I moved down the hall and stood before the strange locked door. There were 3 separate locks. I used the keys he gave me, and one by one, they clicked open. What lay behind was a short stairwell that led down to a concrete basement. The air changed instantly, colder, wetter. with the stench of mildew and iron. I switched on the dim bulb hanging from the ceiling. It barely lit the room. At the center was a metal table with leather restraints bolted into the surface. Chains hung from hooks in the wall. There was a drain on the floor, rusted and stained. In the corner, a metal cabinet. Inside it were labeled folders with photos, clippings, and journal entries. Each one documented a different person, name, age, location, time of abduction, how long they were kept. Some were local, some from out of state. One folder had a picture that stopped my heart. It was the same woman from the Polaroid I found earlier. The missing person from the library poster. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. I had uncovered something monstrous. And then I heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the hallway. My mind screamed. I turned off the light and crouched behind a tall water heater. Harold was back. He wasn't supposed to return for days. "I know someone's down here," he called out. Voice cold now. Calm. Didn't I lock the door? I didn't dare make a sound. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. Footsteps slowly came down the stairs. I saw his silhouette cross the room, right past the cabinet. He stood near the table for a long moment. Then he turned around and walked back up the stairs. A minute passed. 2. Then the overhead light clicked on again. He knew. I bolted from my hiding spot and charged up the stairs. Harold was waiting at the top, but I slammed into him with all my strength. He stumbled, caught off guard. I threw open the door and ran down the hall, out the apartment, and into the street. I didn't stop running until I reached the gas station 3 blocks away. The police arrived after I called them, shaking and gasping through the whole story. They followed me back to the apartment, skeptical, until they saw the door. But what they found left everyone stunned. The basement room was gone. The staircase had been sealed up with drywall. The padlocked door, painted over like it had always been part of the wall. The photos, files, even the metal table, all vanished. Harold stood calmly in his living room, sipping tea like nothing had happened. He told the officers he'd never given me a key, claimed I broke in, said I had a wild imagination. They couldn't find evidence strong enough to hold him. But one officer told me, privately, that the place smelled like bleach, and the floor where the basement had been sounded hollow. Harold moved out a week later. No forwarding address. No one saw a moving truck. I tried to forget, but 6 months later, I received a letter. No return address. Inside was a single Polaroid. A woman, eyes wide, gagged. On the back, written in tiny print, "Still watching." I used to clean houses for a living, deep cleaning, mostly for wealthy people who didn't want to lift a finger. I took jobs through a local app in Denver, and it paid decently enough to keep my freelance art career alive. Most gigs were boring. Dust, mop, maybe toss out some garbage. But one job I took last fall still haunts me. Not just because of what I found, but because of what they tried to make me forget. It started with a request from a woman named Trina Delgado. She contacted me directly through the app, saying she had a large home in the suburbs that needed a full cleanup before the weekend. The message was polite, but strangely formal. "The home has been unoccupied for a while," she wrote. "Please do not open any locked doors. Focus only on the kitchen, living room, bedrooms, and upstairs bathrooms. I didn't think much of it. Rich people were often picky about their privacy. I took the job. The house was massive, a three-story colonial, tucked behind thick pine trees at the end of a gravel driveway. There were no cars in sight, no neighbors nearby. The front porch light was on even though it was mid-afternoon. The key was under the mat, just like she said. The moment I stepped inside, I felt off. The air was stale. The curtains were drawn tight across every window, letting in barely any light. The house didn't smell rotten, just unused, like old paper and metal. The instructions she left were printed out and left on the kitchen counter. She had labeled each room I was allowed to enter with little yellow post-it notes. Living room, vacuum thoroughly. Bedroom 2, change bed sheets, fresh linens in closet, and so on. But what got me were the doors that had thick red excess taped on them. 3 total, one in the hallway, one upstairs, and one at the far end of the kitchen. They weren't just marked. They were bolted shut from the outside. The kitchen one especially caught my eye. The hinges were heavy, industrial, like something from a prison cell. Why would someone bolt a pantry like that? Still, I did the job. Cleaned, dusted, wiped, mopped. But I couldn't shake the weird feeling. There were no family photos in the house. No clothes in the closets. No mail. No signs that anyone had ever actually lived there. Just furniture, dishes, and made beds. On the second day, I started hearing things. I was upstairs vacuuming when I heard what sounded like someone walking below me. Slow, deliberate steps, almost like pacing. I paused the vacuum. Silence. I convinced myself it was the old house settling. But when I went back downstairs, I noticed something that hadn't been there before. Single dirty footprint on the kitchen tile. Just one. It looked bare, almost childlike, but the toes were long, too long. I should have left right then, but curiosity got the better of me. On the final day, I gave in and did something I wasn't supposed to do. I opened the cleaning supply closet near the laundry room and found a different floor plan of the house, one with an extra room. It was hand-drawn in pencil on the back of an old blueprint. It showed a room labeled only as basement, service room D4. But the house had no basement, or at least, no access to one that I could see. Except, there was that bolted door at the end of the kitchen. I stared at it for a long time. It took me nearly 30 minutes to work up the nerve. I told myself I'd just check it out. Make sure there was nothing dangerous or leaking inside. The bolts came off easily. When I opened the door, a wave of cold air swept out. There were concrete stairs leading down. No lights, just a narrow hallway at the bottom, with old hospital-style tiles on the floor and a single metal door. And a smell. It hit me like a wall. Chemical, almost acidic, but laced with something organic. Rotting. I held my breath and stepped down. I opened the door slowly. The room inside was lit with a flickering fluorescent tube. It was completely empty, except for a hospital bed in the center of the room, and a tray of medical tools beside it. Bloodstains were soaked into the floor. Not fresh, but not old either. There were restraints on the bedposts. Leather straps with dried crust. Around the buckles, one of them had snapped. On the far wall was a large two-way mirror, but I saw no reflection. That's when I knew it wasn't a mirror at all. Someone had been watching the room from the other side. I pressed my ear against the glass, and I swear I heard breathing. Slow, steady, and not mine. I backed away, heart racing. Just as I reached the stairs, I heard a door slam somewhere above me. Then, fast footsteps, more than one set, moving through the kitchen. Panicked, I turned off the basement light and crept back up. The kitchen was empty again, everything quiet, but the front door was locked from the inside. Someone had shut it while I was downstairs. I grabbed my stuff, bolted through the back door, and didn't look back. Later that night, I called the number Trina had left me. It rang twice and then disconnected. I tried again the next morning. Same result. When I checked the home services app, her account was gone. Deleted. I filed a report with the local police. They visited the house, and they found nothing. No bolted doors. No locked basement. No metal table. Nothing. I told them about the blueprint, the strange room, the restraints, the mirror. They told me I probably got the address wrong or made a mistake, that I was exaggerating, that maybe I'd watched too many horror movies. But I knew what I saw. A few weeks passed. I tried to forget, but then a package arrived at my apartment. No return address. Inside was a Polaroid. It showed me cleaning the upstairs bathroom of that house. The angle was from the hallway. I never noticed anyone watching me. On the back of the photo was a handwritten note. It said, "We told you not to open the door." I moved to a different state a month later. Changed my number. Never took another cleaning job again. But sometimes, I still wake up in the middle of the night. Cold sweat clinging to my skin. Convinced someone is watching me through a mirror that isn't really a mirror. And sometimes, when I walk past hotel rooms or abandoned homes, I swear I see the same red X, faded, but still there, waiting for someone else to make the same mistake. It was just past 11:30 p.m. when Jamie Holtz, a 23-year-old college student from Michigan, turned his headlights onto the desolate stretch of County Road 31, a lesser-used back road that cut through the woods like a vein. He was heading home after visiting his girlfriend in Iron River, about a 90-minute drive from his dorm in Marquette. Jamie liked taking the long route at night. It gave him space to think, or so he believed. About 20 miles into the dark stretch, Jamie saw something ahead, a figure standing at the side of the road, arm raised, thumb out. A hitchhiker. Jamie slowed instinctively. The man was dressed oddly, a torn flannel jacket, pants soaked from the dew or something worse, and a duffel bag at his feet. His hair was long, disheveled, and his face, even in the headlights, was expressionless, almost hollow. Jamie cracked the passenger window. "You all right, man?" The guy nodded slowly. Car broke down. No signal. Just heading north. Could use a lift. A moment of hesitation. Then Jamie unlocked the door. "Hop in." For the first 10 minutes, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the rhythmic hum of tires and the occasional rustling of trees against the wind. Jamie, feeling awkward, finally broke the silence. "Name's Jamie. You." A pause. "You can call me Ray," the man replied, still staring ahead. Ray had a strange smell about him. Not body odor, but something like iron and mold. The kind of scent that clung to basements and old tools. Jamie rolled down his window slightly. They passed a sign that read, "Dead in 6 miles," but Jamie knew. The road went much further into another county. The sign had always confused him. "Where exactly are you headed?" Jamie asked. Ray turned to him slowly. "Doesn't matter. Just somewhere far. That answer chilled Jamie. He laughed nervously, trying to shake it off. You, run into some trouble? Ray turned back toward the road, voice lower now. People don't understand what quiet is. Too much noise in this world. I like roads like this. Clean. Empty. Jamie glanced at him. Yeah, peaceful. That's when he noticed Ray had no cell phone. No watch. Nothing digital. Just the duffel bag. It was impossible not to stare at it. The bag. It was coated in old stains. Dark, dried patches that had clearly been scrubbed but never fully gone. And it moved. At first, Jamie thought it was just the road. Vibrations from the tires. But then he saw it again. A subtle shifting, like something inside was reacting to the curves and bumps. You got a pet in there? He asked, half joking. Ray didn't laugh. No, but some things follow you whether you want them to or not. Jamie wanted to stop the car, tell him to get out. But something, fear, curiosity, kept him driving. Ray then leaned forward. Want to know a secret? No offense, but I'm good on secrets tonight. But Ray continued anyway. I used to work at a funeral home, back when people still respected the dead. My job was to clean the bodies. But sometimes, they didn't come in whole. Car accidents, murders, suicides. Jamie's stomach dropped. One time, Ray said, his voice lowering to almost a whisper, I found something inside a body they missed. A note, sewn into the stomach lining, like someone wanted it to be found only by me. What did it say? Jamie asked, unable to stop himself. Ray turned to him with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You picked the wrong body. Jamie's hands tightened on the steering wheel. Look, man, I think I should drop you off here. Ray didn't argue. He just pointed. There's a turnoff ahead. Gravel path. Take it. Jamie did. Against every instinct, he took the turn. They drove for another half-mile into dense trees. Then, at a clearing, Ray finally said, Here. Jamie stopped the car. Ray opened the door, but before stepping out, he leaned in. Thanks for the ride. Then he added, You're not the first. Jamie's heart dropped. What do you mean? Ray stepped out, walked behind the car, and vanished into the trees, duffel bag in hand. 3 days later, Jamie couldn't get the incident out of his head. He reported it to the police. They said no missing persons fit the man's description. But one officer, older and clearly shaken, pulled Jamie aside. You said County Road 31? Yeah. Son, that road was closed in '92 after the Riverside Butcher case. Man would pose as a hitchhiker. Got picked up by travelers. Never harmed them right away. Just talked. Then he'd disappear. Every single person who picked him up died within 3 weeks. Suicides, accidents. One guy drowned in his own pool with all the doors locked. Jamie froze. But I'm fine. Nothing's happened. The officer looked grim. You said he carried a bag? Yeah. The cop rubbed his face. Every time. Same bag. Same clothes. No fingerprints. Never caught. Locals say his spirit still hitches rides. And whoever sees what's inside that bag doesn't live long after. Jamie, terrified, installed cameras around his apartment. Slept with the lights on. Refused to drive. He avoided roads altogether, ordering food, skipping class, isolating himself. On the 20th night, his neighbor, a retired nurse, heard loud banging. Then silence. Police found Jamie's body sitting upright on his couch. No signs of forced entry, but one detail shook them all. A duffel bag was on the floor. Inside was a Polaroid camera, and next to it, a freshly developed photo. Jamie, mouth open in a silent scream, standing beside the man in the flannel. But the man wasn't looking at the camera. He was staring directly at the person holding it. And the timestamp? 11:31 p.m. Exactly 3 weeks after Jamie picked up the hitchhiker.